All right, just stepping in. Can we talk about Paramount Plus and how great it is? I mean, it's so tough to say one of the streaming platforms is that good or better than the other because it is really right now anybody. Well, I would say HBO Max is probably the best. But for the most part, it's like a race to the finish to see who's going to be the premier streaming platform. And I gotta say, I like a lot of them. I wish they were paying me instead of me paying to get the service. But Paramount Plus is unique and it's different. And I wanted to do an episode here where we talk about sort of all of these different things crossing together. So Paramount Plus, of course, did launch the Real World Homecoming. We saw the New York season, we saw the LA, which I like to call the Tami Roman season, and now we're seeing New Orleans. And it's so fantastic. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And I also want to talk briefly about the real world. The Real World Road Rules Challenge became the challenge, and how they just actually launched their trailer looking into the next season. This will be season 3 of the challenge, still hosted by TJ Lavin. I kind of feel like Eric Nies should be the host, but that's just me. And there's a couple things that are going to be different or added up as far as what did he say? We're going to up the ante a little bit. And so I wanted to take a quick look at the trailer and then we'll talk about what we feel specifically about this third installment. Do we like because this was like a tease a little bit, after Allstars 2 with MJ and Janae, they had already teased that it was coming. It is a bit surprising that it's taken this long, but I digress. I guess, anything's good is worth the wait. I want to talk about if I and you like this cast, and also some things I'll be doing in vein of the recap space with this too. So let's take a look at this one and we'll talk.
Now we're talking.
Until my last breath, I will fight tooth and nail.
This is the most cutthroat game that has ever been invented.
This season, I've upped the ante, and I've only invited an elite group of competitors. Every competitor here has made it to a final.
I am determined to right this wrong.
I am not here.
Oh, she quit last season.
I'm here to play the messiest game you've ever seen.
This will be your biggest competition yet. Now we're talking.
I have never seen such savages.
Gone are the days of men running the game.
I want us to dominate.
You don't come to the challenge not ready to win.
I'm gonna you guys up. I am gonna win.
The whole thing is like just stressing.
We're seeing a lot of Wes in the trailer. I don't know what that means.
I want it all.
It's gonna be wild.
Sylvia. Ooh.
Only shooting stars break the mold.
The Challenge All-Stars, streaming May 11th exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Okay. That is quite a trailer. And quite a cast. There are still a couple cast members that I feel like dropped the ball to a degree, but as TJ said, it was upping the ante, and everyone had to be at this certain level in order to be there. Obviously, unfortunately, we think of people like Sylvia. We're like, did she make it that far initially? But Sylvia might just be great television, and in this show, there's always a mix between both. Maybe the regular MTV version, it's mostly competitive, or actually, it's mostly your social media following that gets you cast. But I think in Real World Road Rules Challenge style, this Challenge All Stars, they do need stories. They do need cast members to be compelling. I think they spend a little bit more time with a good mix, I would say, between challenge and all the crazy on the truck and being flung across the ocean challenges and very cinematic. But I think they also have cast members that have a story to tell. Even cast members like last season who specifically as a cast member, I'm never going to be intrigued by what is her name from Austin. The blonde from Austin never really will qualify as an all-star. Yet she had a really great story to tell. So even me, watching it, my heart is, went out to her with the story that she told last season. You know what I mean? And I think every cast member in this regard probably has that element where it's like, why are they here after so long? Who's really in it for the money? Who's just in it for, reinvention and self-discipline. It seems like Wes is going to get a lot of time. It's nice to see someone like Veronica back. I'm not going to go to each individual, but these are just people that, of course, we like. Darrell, being such a winner, and then All Stars 1 getting so close, and yes, essentially did beat him. And so it's nice. We're going to have Yes on this season, who's ready to win again. And then, some strong competitors like Wes, like Darrell. And it's just great because, a lot of times we don't see the aged cast members. So this is why we like Challenge All Stars. Oh, secondly, I'm going to tell you, Paramount Plus, I'm also going to talk about why I like the Real World Homecoming New Orleans. Okay, so that's coming next. But I was going to tell you, if you like the challenge, there's really not much else to talk about. The trailer does look good. I'm never really that big of a fan. It's funny. It seems like I was not a big fan of Austin. Wes does carry a lot, but outside of that, like Melinda, as I was saying earlier, she's not compelling. Nehemiah's not compelling. And stuff like this will never change. But Wes is. So now that you got 3 people from Austin, maybe there's going to be something to really look out for. So I'm going off my viewpoints of season 2, and I'm kind of like, another Nehemiah and another Melinda season. Not really where I would have went, but maybe with that extra bit of power and the alliances and the teammates, and maybe they'll go a little further. I was going to say, though, too, if you want to talk about the Challenge All-Stars, season 1 and 2, right here on RandomlyRJ.com, along with my brother, we recapped every episode. So it's Audible. Every single episode from the Challenge All-Stars 1 and 2 were spoke about. And I would like to say recapped in detail with myself and my brother. And the funny thing is, you know my personality, and I've been doing broadcasts since, the dinosaurs were around, and, tons of radio, tons of television, just a bunch of different things, and, the YouTube platform, etc. But what's great about it is this will be the first time that me and my brother have, pretty much got to work together, because he never followed in the world of broadcasting. He kind of did his own thing, and he's a fantastic worker, and more in the blue collar vibes, but he loves sports. And he used to say, oh yeah, the challenge, Real World Road Rules, is like the 5th sport, or whatever you want to call it, the 6th sport. And it's kind of a great way for him and I to be so yin yang, because I'm just like, sports bore me, but I like the real world. And so we come together and we recap it. So if you do want to recap every single episode of All Stars 3, we will be doing it right here on Randomly with Ronnie Jr. Can we move on to the New Orleans Real World Homecoming? This is what I'm saying. Paramount Plus is really giving it. Now, I'm not going to do episode by episode of Real World Homecoming New Orleans. I'm going to say that I like it. And I also did do a trailer reaction when it first came out. And the only reason I wanted to jump back on and talk about it is because I was like, wow, Paramount, you're giving us 2 shows at the same time. And I like them both 100%. That Challenge All-Stars trailer, it had a lot, and you want to see like Mark Long, competing. He wasn't on season 2. It seems like they got a lot of great things within the challenge franchise, branding. I think there's the challenge YouTube fitness series now that Rachel Robinson hosts. So I kind of am very okay with the challenge expanding in all of these different ways. But at the core of it, for me, it's always going to be the real world. But the fact that both, again, I can't stress it enough, Paramount Plus, you might be winning the streaming game, because both of these shows really speak to me. I think the casting is pretty good. I've already said a couple knocks of who on the challenge I don't like. But that doesn't mean they can't win, and it doesn't mean I won't watch. It's just who I would not have casted. Sylvia, we're not really sure if she would have been casted, or why she was casted, but it's still a great show. So again, Challenge All-Stars, it's coming up. I'm excited about it. But the thing that did just actually hit was the Real World New Orleans. And I already thought I would like it. I really did. I thought I would really, really enjoy it. And I think it was 10 times over. When you look at the cast, I mean, it's just, I think the setup itself was done really well. You had the energy of New Orleans, you had the energy of the 2000s, and they did it in such a way, like when they ramped it up as far as the intro, they made it like, the real world was such a big show all of these seasons, but nothing was as big as New Orleans. And then the first thing I thought, I was like, well, I thought seasons like San Diego, Chicago, New Orleans all made sense to me, as did Real World New York the first season, and even the second, and even San Francisco and London. Um, well, all of them really, but I really thought 2000 and New Orleans made sense because of my age. So I was the exact same age, not exact same age, but I was like a 20-year-old when this show essentially came out. Obviously they record previous, the year before, but something about it made me really attached to it because I was like, oh man, I really like seeing what the older crowd, and now as a 20-year-old, you're like the older crowd is a 24-year-old. Now I think of a 24-year-old like they barely have enough sense to wake up in the morning. But nonetheless, it's just so intriguing, and it also shows that when you're really young, all of these different ages, kind of like in high school, if you're in ninth grade and someone's in 11th or a senior, it's so big of a difference. But then once you hit over 35, we're all the same age basically. So that was the one thing about it that really got me. I figured Real World New Orleans, Homecoming on Paramount Plus, we're going to get a lot of good music. We're going to get a lot of flashbacks of just a time, a time that we were the thing we were thinking about the most was Y2K maybe, or just getting through that. Jennifer Lopez's career was barely starting. Remember, she had the music video Waiting for Tonight. She had the Head and Shoulders commercial. Like, you thought she was going to be something after Selena, but you didn't think she was going to be like, this monumentally big. So it really takes you back to a time. Again, I think everyone likes New Orleans, but I feel like there's an extra soft spot in the hearts of people who grew up or traveled to New Orleans a lot. That's for sure. And then B, people that are in my age bracket, because you cannot retell this nostalgia. And then it also does something to you, because when you see the cast members and they're talking about, well, when I was in my 20s, this was the only thing I wanted, and now that I'm this age, I want, my life has changed in this way. Seeing it exactly to your age, you know what I mean? Again, I might have been 19, I might have been 20. I think I was definitely younger than 21 at this time, but it really does something to you, because it makes you as a viewer go through all of these things that had happened, and you're like, were those good choices? Did I make the right choices? And I ended up here, but how did this happen? Stuff like that. I think Jamie alluded to that, how, like, when you're young, you're so focused and you're going to do all these things, and then you blink your eyes and you're 35 years old. I could not relate to a comment more. Obviously, our queen of the show is and will always be Mellisa. From the few interviews I've heard of Mellisa, I'm not sure that she's going to, it's weird, because to be a good reality star, sometimes you got to show it all, you got to give it all. But yeah, while that's great for the viewership and that's great to get casted again and again and again, this is somebody who's now evolved to a mother, I think, of 3. She lives out in Long Island, has her husband and a great little life. You're not going to be as willing to, stir up what, potentially what the producers are going to want from you. So I think Mellisa, we're going to see a great level of growth, but either way would have been great. If she would have walked in that door and, Julie, I got something to tell you, I would have been good with that. If she wanted to be more reserved and sort of protect, the fact that she knows the way editing goes and stuff of that nature, I think that's great too. When you in life have something structurally put together, you can be more assertive with your boundaries. I think she said that, boundaries too. We will talk about Julie in a moment, which I like to think Julie is auditioning to be on Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Because her behavior is looking quite bad in that trailer. And again, I'm not going to do episode by episode. Obviously, I can if there's a need for it. I try to spare my time a little bit, and obviously, if there was more support over on the patreon.com/randomlyRJ Jr., we would do an episode every week. But you gotta break it out and do it as best you can, and that is, of course, what I'm trying to do. But this episode felt so good. And again, the Challenge Allstars 3 trailer came out. I was like, I have got to gush about what I think about Paramount Plus. I have to do it. And so here I am doing it. Talking about the entire cast, I wanted to mention a couple first impressions that I did get. Unfortunately, Matt was underwhelming the first time and underwhelming the second time. It does look like the only thing that we're going to go through is his, further disdain or disdain that he had back in the day for Danny's walk in life, as a gay man. Like, I don't know if that's what Matt felt at the very beginning or if it's sort of just intensified. He wasn't very comfortable with it from the beginning, but now, all these years later, you're 40 plus years old and, he's got 6 kids, he's married, he held himself out for virginity as long until he got married. So he might have a more critical comment on Danny. And of course, I do like that we're seeing that Danny's like, no, how I held my tongue the first time, I will not do this time. And I'm interested to see Danny's storyline. He obviously has stuff to talk about. So we'll let those play out, in the vein of stigma and stuff of that nature, so I'm interested to see if we'll get some of that. I love that Mellisa said, oh yeah, we know Kelly, she's only a celebrity wife, married to Scott Wolf. And, she appears to want to put more into the show this year, this round. But I'm all for seeing where that materializes. We have Jamie, who I thought was actually a little bit more on the quiet side. I know like there was a lot of like, oh, fraternity guy, Northwestern, and I was totally for it, but I felt like he was kind of not the most rambunctious or excited the first go around. But I feel like he's ready to play this time, and I'm really intrigued to see what his story is. Episode 1 got me. Like I was like, that's what you do. You go do these shows. You go in 22 years later, uninhibited, and let the cards land where they land. So the once known as the once known as David, come on, be my baby tonight, David, is now known and possibly going specifically like a legally changed name to Tokyo. So that'll be interesting to see because there wasn't any judgment with the other cast members, but it was showing that there was something in his world where he needed to attach creatively, culturally. And I don't know, I don't want to word it incorrectly on how he assessed this name, but whatever the reason was, it was his assessment to have, and everyone took it really well. I not because of the name, but I was a little worried that his demeanor on the first season would make some of the people a little bit upset. But I felt like they received him very, very well. Again, you look like you have a group of cast members that are living their best lives, doing the best that they can. And when you have that, good for the cast, bad for maybe Boone and Murray Productions to not have, the shit show which the real world sometimes become. But I got to tell you, and I know I'm not the only one, I sometimes think the real world is better with the longer storytelling. I sometimes don't need the, episode 1 screaming in someone's face, because what it ends up being is you see that they're going specifically to have a reality TV moment, and then they're going to sell t-shirts that said, I told that bitch. It's so predictable these days, especially with people like this cast, because this cast, they originated it to a degree. I love it when some cast members from reality shows say, oh, we basically were doing it when no one was doing it. Not really. I would say to about this time, no one was doing it but the real world, because this was about the ninth season. And you had, you didn't have Survivor. Survivor was just starting. You didn't have all of these other shows. So I always find it funny when people talk about like the early, like 2008, 2009, and they're like, we were the pioneers. I'm like, really? At this point, if you were the real world, you would go get casted, and you would, whatever city you would be in, the city themselves hated you. They are not hated, but they taunted you. They would, catch wind that there's a real world house in their city. Philadelphia, DC, San Diego had a hard time, and they would really kind of not make them feel welcome. It wasn't the time now where so many people, you could pick any neighborhood in almost any neighborhood of any city or town. And people are very familiar with reality TV cameras, but beyond that, they're familiar with, people taking Instagram photos of everything. People walking across the street. So it's a different time. I think this was the last group, you know. Hopefully Chicago, I would think, is in that group. I love the Chicago season. I would love it if Real World Homecoming was Chicago. I will always tell you, Kara Khan, top rated real worlder. I mean, she's up there with the Corals and the Melissas and the Tami Romans and the you know, whoever else, but all of real world New York. Um, Mike the Miz, maybe. But anyway, um, it was the last group of real worlders where they faced such an isolated experience. And I think Mellisa talks about that isolated experience. You know, now it's done in a way, once like these celebrities like Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson, when they started doing it, and the Osbournes, and it became it became a business. Um, it really changed. Then people got really familiar with reality TV cameras, but not this cast. No, this cast, to many degrees, originated so much, and I think they deserve their props. Now we have to get to the bottom of what's going on with Julie. I was chatting with somebody and I said, it has to be like an act. Like that's her whole thing. Like her, even when she's crying, even when she's tiptoeing, even when it like it's all an act, right? Because the reason I would say that is because how could you be so within the rest of the trailer, you know, cursing people off and walking off stage and all of these things, but then there's another side of you that's that timid. I feel like those don't the person who F you and walks off stage doesn't timidly walk into somebody's room like that. It just doesn't make sense. And again, I have half the sense to do a week by week of this show, but I'm going to just do the opening, which is, you know, this first episode. And then when the whole season airs, then I'll come back and give my thoughts and maybe have a couple other panelists with me. But yeah, no, I'm intrigued. To me, I'm like, is Julie thinking, oh, you know, I'm the girl who took all the exposure of the Mormon, the good and the bad of, you know, what she dealt with. And I'm not saying she didn't deal with stuff, but she had her heyday, and now she sees real Housewives of Salt Lake City. They lost a couple cast members. She could easily up and move and, you know, go live in Salt Lake City and be a compelling cast member, you know, along with who's there? Whitney, Heather Gay, Lisa Barlow, Meredith. I mean, Julie Stouffer is showing that she can do it. Contractually, I don't know how easily it would be for her to get over to Real Housewives, but I mean, is this an agenda? Like, it seems crazy. And here's another reason that I'm going to say that I don't get it. And I think it's a bit of an act. I was talking to somebody, like I said, and they were like, oh, well, maybe she's just ignorant or is not knowing. And it's like, I think that's an act though. Like, she was on a podcast, the Mike Lewis podcast, and she was talking about, oh, my experience was so good, but I don't know about this one. And, you know, who knows how I'll be edited. Like, clearly you remember in the trailer falling out of a car, being apparently drunk or whatnot. Like, clearly you know, were kicking and screaming when Tokyo's taking you out of the thing, as far as from the trailer. Like, clearly, and I'm not saying, we don't know if any of these things were just edited to make you feel a certain way. Oh, and then it looks like Mellisa says that she made an accusation which was out of line as well. We will find out where that all materializes. But the bigger thing that I'm trying to say is, if you went through all of those things, like let's say it's me on a show, I don't then turn around and go to a podcast interview and say, well, gee golly, I don't know how it's going to turn out this time. I don't know if I'm going to get that, you know, really nice edit. And I thought it was a great experience. And, you know, some of my cast members have issues, but, you know, I seem to not have any. Like, you don't say that. Like, this is a gimmick at this point, right? It just has to be. So I want to make sure that when I do these episodes, I always look on the side of people who, you know, whatever my real opinion is. And I'm really like, my eyes are going up and down, like, what is going on with Julie? That almost sounded like Danny. What is going on with Julie? But then I'm also like, let me try my best to do what is Julie's, you know, where is she at in this race? Because even in the trailer, it's like, you know, Kelly's like, I came here for a reason you didn't come here for. I mean, she's doing it again. They're all clocking her insincerity. You know, that's the thing about now versus yesteryear. Now you can literally, this is what I love about my program here. It is small as far as our audience at this point, but we keep it pretty funky. You know, we just authentic and that's it. But this day and age, you can really maneuver and manipulate anything you want on social media. And I think people take advantage of it. And I'm not saying Julie is like that, but I'm saying we are in a world where she could go and do her little confessional and say, oh, gee golly, I don't know. Maybe they're not going to like me this time. And then know damn well what exactly happened. Play this story. And I think, when you start to see that other cast members, see right through it, somebody like Kelly, who isn't necessarily confrontational, who knows? But then again, Kelly's comment about we're not here for the same thing could be, any thing under the sun. It could not be directed towards even Julie, but it'll be interesting to see. I do think if we see a lot of Julie mess, I think the audience will be a little bit disappointed because what it's showing is sort of like the first time she got to be sort of ignorant, in her words, I guess, and wanting to learn. And then now she gets to be ignorant on like not necessarily coming with her best foot forward, or feeling like, okay, so let's say she has a misstep and they tell her you have a misstep. Her job is to listen, understand it, and kind of move on, not to like combat the person. Like, it's almost like she takes it, it's almost like a selfish approach, right? That, if I tell you this is what you did, this is how it made me feel, you have one choice. You could say, no, I don't agree, and you could double down, or you can, let the person have their moment. But when you overshadow it by, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, it's like, it's very unfair. And I really don't know where this is going to go, but I was really, storytelling wise, Buddha Murray, I felt like it was paced well. I felt like we didn't get into it. I remember chatting with somebody talking about, oh yeah, this is it's going to be, I wish I would have got more, see episode 1 and 2, not me. This was enough. I will, again, me recapping this. I'll come back and recap the finale. Maybe with the panel or whatever, but it did enough for me. It gave me just enough. I want more, but you got to wait a week. I don't like to binge shows. I don't do Netflix reality, at least, where I could watch it all in one sitting. That's not for me. I like it week by week by week. Let's draw this out and let's see if we could start to have different impressions of the people. It seems like people are giving a different, at least now, an impression of Tokyo, once known as David. It seems like Jamie, I thought was going to be a little quiet. I don't even remember him being that loud and partying in the first season. I just remember Mellisa saying, Jamie, I want you to touch my buttocks. When I was rewatching the original, I did not know how booty happy Mellisa was. It was like she couldn't get it. She could not stop talking about all things butts. And so it's just so crazy to see, 22 years difference of life, and we're all the same people, but we're also different. And if any of these cast members wants to let loose too, and they want to go ham, and that's welcome as well. Maybe Julie's the only one who's going to really do that. But I think in the essence of really great real world storytelling, we got a season here. My question to you would be, who do you want to see the next Homecoming? I really I just can't. We cannot do real world Homecoming Austin. I think it was one of the most lackluster casts. I think what it ended up happening is they thought the Melinda Danny storyline was going to be so big and cutesy, and it really was not. And I also think, and this is not to say it was a bad season, I don't think Philadelphia did that great, but I think they sort of got excited about, oh, well, don't worry, we've got Austin. And they MTV put a lot of promotions and marketing into that, is what it felt like. So I'd rather see a real world Philadelphia before a real world Austin. I was a little on the fence on real world Vegas. I believe Frank was the only one who hasn't really signed on to do it because of his job. I believe a lot of the other cast members are, of course, interested. We just saw Arissa on Challenge All-Stars 1. Although she did not do the greatest, she would probably be great for the real world Homecoming. And I don't know about Elon, but I think she'd be great. Bryn, I believe, has spoken about she would do it. So there's a lot to go off of, but I like the show so much. But at the same time, I'm always like, okay, somebody at Paramount or Buddha Murray, can you guys just we'll take a month break, but let's just keep cranking them out. I hope the ratings and the numbers, when I do these recaps, I don't really like to go off the calculation of that. I just want to go off the calculation of my heart, like if I like it or not. But I hope the calculation of the numbers is good enough that we get another one. But right now, what is it? 8 episodes of Homecoming New Orleans and to really like bask in that and bask in what we felt like when we were in our 2000s. I'm fresh off being 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, and I'm saying, I want this with the world. Jamie said it. He's like, I was going to do this and this and this. And maybe he succeeded a lot. Maybe he failed a lot. We all feel for sure that it's going to go a certain way. And it sometimes does not, or sometimes it exceeds our expectations too. But to go back to that place, I just thought was so great. I'm really excited about the flashbacks that we're going to get. We didn't get much of that in episode 1. But I felt like there was a cohesive energy with the cast, sans Julie, who, if it was my better judgment, I would say is hoping to parlay this into another series, even though she walks on the set like, oh gee willikers, gee golly. It's like you keep, like, it's almost like a sickness. She lets on that she's a little bit less than bright, and it's like, come on. I mean, is that the truth? And if it is, then of course I feel bad for saying this, but it feels a bit like an act, right? Doesn't it feel a little bit like an act, like a little bit? But anyways, our queen of the show is and will always be Mellisa, and everyone else seems to be really cool and intriguing. And again, if you want more on this we'll always keep it on this channel. If you want more of the challenge, All-Stars season 3 recap, that will also be on Randomly with Ronnie Jr. as well. I will recap that with my brother. So a lot of Paramount Plus stuff. I think Paramount Plus should probably start throwing me a check of some sorts, but if they don't do it, you could do it. Patreon.com/randomlyRJ Jr. for even more stuff. I guess that's it. I really liked it. I did not plan on doing a second episode on the Real World Homecoming New Orleans, but if you're like me and you were like, oh my God, this is good. I felt like we had to come here and talk about it. So leave your comments if you want more, and maybe I'll come back week by week. I don't think so. I think I'm going to just do the finale and kind of encapsulate everything that we had saw and learned. I mean, right now we don't know. Maybe we'll think differently of Kelly by the 6th episode. Maybe Mellisa will step in it. I doubt it, because I also am familiar with her podcast and she's great all the time. Maybe I'm really intrigued with the stories that Danny's going to tell, and he'd been in the city, but then now he's in Vermont, and what were those reasonings and his personal relationships with his exes, and stuff of that nature, and all the things that come with it. I'm really excited to see it all. That wraps up this episode. Hashtag Randomly with Ronnie Jr. Gotta go.
Hey, Ronnie Jr.